On January 1st, 1976, the world stood still when in the packed Philadelphia Spectrum Arena, the undisputed world heavyweight champion Apollo Creed experienced the first knockdown of his career. In the first round, by a semi-pro boxer in a gimmick match. Leading up to this match, the media was calling it the greatest farce in sports history. No one thought he stood a chance. No one, up until this moment, was taking this match seriously, except one man. Welcome to the Fantastic Histories podcast, where we tell you stories you won't believe. My name's Leslie Morris.
My name's John Noonan.
And this week, we're looking at the early career of one Robert Rocky Balboa. So, when did you first learn about Rocky?
First time I heard about Rocky, actually my grandfather is a wrestling fan and a boxing fan.
Yeah, of course, goes hand in hand.
Yeah, of course. So we had lots of
They're both real athletic competitions,
they are
unlike
both real athletic
UFC, which we all know is predetermined.
Well, yes, exactly.
And those people, they have kind of characters and personas.
Yeah.
They play it and storylines, but wrestling and boxing.
Very real, very real.
Yeah.
But he was a big fan of all this, and I'm talking about British wrestling, so I'm talking giant haystacks and Big Daddy, things like Big Daddy, who would then go on to advertise HP sauce.
Good, yeah.
Well, it's Daddy's favourite, so it made sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so he had a lot of VHSs of different matches and stuff like that. So I kind of learnt about Rocky through him because he had, a mixture of recorded and ones you'd buy, the back shelf of HMV.
Yeah. I think like a lot of people, Rocky was just around. I didn't much like you, I didn't know if he was a wrestler or a boxer or what he really was. In the early 80s, there was just a ton of media. And when you're a little kid, you don't really think about it too hard. No. But I remember being a teenager and at the local video store over summer, they had the special that was their weekly films were 20 cents each.
All right.
So this was the summer. I watched all the James Bond films. I watched so much wrestling. And as you were saying, they had these compilation tapes of Rocky's matches, and they were numbered 1 through 4.
Right.
Yeah, but the problem was part 4 was it was rated R because it had the match between Apollo Creed and Drago in it.
Ah.
So, I couldn't rent it as a kid.
Well, that's kind of weird because in the UK, exempt from classification. Oh, really? As long as you class it as a documentary, you can do anything.
Oh, wow.
The exception of the Faces of Death movies, they were just banned.
But, I remember, at the time when he went to Russia for the Soviet showdown, it was huge. It played live on Australian TV around, I don't know, the day after Christmas. But being too young, and anyway, so as a teenager, I wanted to see it, but I couldn't. But I had a friend who, classic, parents left town, and instead of being normal teenagers and renting porn, we rented this tape. And it was just at that age of we knew we were going to see somebody get killed because that was all over the cover.
Yeah, totally.
And you watch it as a teenager and, young enough to take this seriously and kind of be a little bit scared of seeing it. And it had a lot more singing and dancing. It's oh, really? Where's James Brown in this? And then, obviously, had the match with Drago, and then he favored it from public light for about 20 years, and, he comes back in drips and drabs now.
Yeah, of course.
But let's talk about his early life. The Italian Stallion, the pride of Philadelphia. Rocky Balboa was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on the 6th of July, 1945. He was the only child of a Roman Catholic Italian family. This is classic Rocky already. Despite being a religious dude, you see his matches, he does the sign of the cross. He being religious all his life, never really preachy about it.
Really?
No, he comes across more as just a humanist.
Fair enough, because I always got the impression he was sort of the great white hope, in terms of Catholicism.
Well, you see, he kind of seems to like everyone. He doesn't really have too much of a grudge against anyone. So there's not a lot we know about Rocky's early life. This is because mostly Rocky doesn't want to talk about it. We can assume his parents were dirt poor and they both died in his 20s. Father had a lot of influence over him, mostly negative, and he hasn't really talked about his mother, but we kind of assume she wasn't much better. In fact, his entire life, up until his 30s, sounds pretty miserable.
Already that's abusive father. Both of them died roughly in his early 20s. Potentially abusive mother as well. I feel that that's going to chart you. That's going to push you down the corridor of a certain kind of profession. And if that profession is punching people in the head for a long time, then that seems to be the way forward.
Yes, we'll come to that later.
Okay,
right. You've hit the opponent on the head. So as a teen, he got into a lot of trouble. He managed to clock up a whopping 18 arrests, 3 probations, and was expelled from 7 schools. Jeez. And as far as I can tell, he was mostly involved in petty theft. He wasn't involved in violent crimes. And I found this a interesting little fact. The first half of this episode is going to be a lot of subtext that will make sense later.
Yeah.
He once mentioned he would stare at streetlights up to 30 minutes without blinking and hold balls so hard in his hand he thought his hand was going to explode. And I think he was doing this for 2 reasons. Firstly, he was just angry and he was just drawing that anger and pain on himself.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know if it was a conscious act. It helped him later when he joined a profession where you're primarily very uncomfortable for long periods of time.
Because when you say it out loud, I didn't know this, so when you say this out loud, that he stood basically staring at streetlights
without blinking.
Without blinking for 30 minutes. Yeah. But the only option left is to go blind. I don't understand.
Well, his ears, his head, his eyes, they're not so good anymore.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, fine. Whatever. What else did he do? He lit glass for a while.
Yeah, well, that's very antisocial behavior, and it's behavior of somebody who's very unhappy. But we'll see, while being associated with a very violent sport, he isn't a violent person. He is chilled. It's believed that his father left his family at some point, and they managed to reconnect before his father died. And on his deathbed, his father told him, "Don't hold a grudge and be nice to people," which, is pretty easy to say in your deathbed after you've lived a life that was quite the opposite of that.
That, my friend, is the Catholic way. There we go. We get to the end. I'm going to Father, forgive me all my sins. You're good. You go to heaven.
But saying that, Rocky took that on board. That's the person he became. I've got a quote. Yeah, and I won't attempt to do the Rocky. Sound like him? Yeah, my old man was never the sharpest. Told me I weren't born with much brains either, so I better use my body. That and the fact that his idol as a youth was boxer Rocky Marcioni encouraged him to take up boxing. Marcioni will become important later, so John, can you just put a tack in that?
Tack right there.
He'll become important in about 45 minutes and in about 30 years' time. 2 tacks. Rocky started boxing at the age of 15, and he trained at Mighty Mick's gym. Traditionally, boxing has had a very long history of attracting poor, angry men. Do you know why?
Because it gives them an outlet.
That, but there's one other key which makes it accessible. To train as a boxer, it's very cheap.
That makes a lot of sense. Yes.
Yeah, you just need gloves, the ring's provided, and training is
at
cheap.
least one fist.
Yeah. And the training is very cheap because it's mostly drills and conditioning. All you can do unsupervised until you get in the ring. Then you need a coach. But a trainer tends to have a bunch of people they're training on some degree. And boxing traditionally for men like Rocky it's always been very good in terms of personal development for a variety of reasons. The most obvious one being that you have to be in excellent overall physical condition before you can even step into the ring, which doesn't happen overnight. It involves focus, it involves discipline, and it involves a shitload of training. And by its very nature, either weeds out the people who don't want discipline or gives it to those who do. So Rocky was training at this point for 5 years, and he asked the owner, Mickey Goldman, basically to take interest in him, take him under the wing so he could become a better boxer. Mickey didn't, and we will get to that later. Put attack. He was also known to lecture street kids about the dangers of youth delinquency, including the younger sister of a friend called Marie. She'll become important in 30 years.
I'm running out of tax. I have to go make a visit to Office Works.
So let's cut to 1975. Rocky's 30, and do you know where his boxing career is going?
The highest peak of humanity. Only, gods weep.
That's right. Nowhere fast.
Excellent. I was right again.
He'd racked up 64 fights, 44 wins, 38 KOs, and 20 losses. Not a terrible record.
It's not a great record.
Not a great one either. It's not setting the world on fire.
You win some, you lose some. A little from column A, a little from column B.
At this point, he was now going under the name the Italian Stallion, spawning from his Italian-American heritage, and was proud by the fact that he had never broken his nose in a professional fight. We don't know a huge amount about his early career, mostly because it was up against bad boxes and shithole venues.
Yeah, I was going to say, surely this is like dance halls and bingo halls and anywhere there's a hall. Just big just a couple of posters. Do you want to go see a dirty fight? Yep, that's fine. And then you're out the door. And I would also imagine some are probably a little bit shifty. A little bit shifty.
Yeah. None of which at the time is worth documenting. But that doesn't stop a legion of people who boxed in the 60s and 70s to say that they beat Rocky Balboa in his early career.
Is it one of those ones where it's like, oh, yeah, I did it. You weren't even there. Yes, I was.
Yeah. Yeah, the internet's filled with those stories, and it's like, yeah, right, mate. Up until this point, the most he'd ever made for a single fight was $400. Now, we do have a documentation of one match, which in and of itself wasn't special or important to the story, but it gives you a sense of what these matches were like.
Okay.
The fight was on November 25th, 1975, against a fighter called Spider Rico. We have details of this match because Rico and Balboa, I'm going to use this phrase a lot in the series, they went on to be lifelong friends.
I'm just picturing them now just running together down the beach training. It was amazing.
It was in a local boxing ring called the Cabrera Fight Club.
Now, are you Italian?
Mamma mia. Nicknamed the Bucket of Blood, and it was inside a chapel. Now, this isn't important. I just like this fact. It was located in the slums of the Kensington district in Philadelphia. Kensington is famous for being the birthplace of the K&A gang, currently known as the Northeast Philly Irish Mob, an Irish-American organized crime network.
That's so on the nose as names go.
And it's like, have a cool name for your gang, like the Death Adders. It's the
Don't
name,
sound like a House of Pain record.
Your name has your geographical location, the name of your city, and your family's heritage, and on the nose calling it a mob.
Sorry, we are the group of French people like to wail on you and take your money. That's how precise you're getting. Shocking.
Yeah. So this place was exactly the shithole you would expect it to be. The room that we're fighting has been described as a large, unemptied trash can. It had dim lights, and the boxing ring was extra small to ensure constant action.
Is this the Expedia review? Is this unlike my travel?
People drank their own alcohol out of paper bags if they weren't throwing the bags into the ring.
Oh, this is classy. This is a classy place.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me more.
It gets better. So, now, this episode has a lot of information about boxing, so you can understand the match at the end.
Yeah.
So, we're just going to go through this information a little bit at a time because we just don't want to bog you down and only telling, really just the important things. So, everything I say about boxing, it's going to be completely glazed over. And certainly, I'm not an expert.
Stop encouraging them to hit the 30-plus button. And just keep going. Stay with us. Don't.
Okay. So, do you know how many people work for a boxer in a typical match? And what they do?
There's the guy who holds the bucket that they then spit into. There's the guy who cut me. There's that guy. And then there's a guy who just goes, hit him! So 3.
Yeah, actually, you're pretty spot on.
Yeah!
Like, more than you think.
High five to me.
Okay, so you have 3 people, typically. You have the cornerman, the cut man, and the trainer. Or maybe the cornerman just does everything. And you can probably guess what the trainer does. But the cut man is a person responsible from preventing and treating physical damage of the fighter during the match. Cutman typically handles swelling, nosebleeds, and lacerations. The rules of boxing stipulate that these injuries can cause a premature match stoppage, counting as a loss to the injured fighter. So having a good cutman is essential. It can be the decisive factor of the outcome of a match. So this is no longer allowed in boxing, and I can't work out the exact year it was banned, but traditionally, cutman would cut open swollen eyelids to let the blood, because if your eye's so swollen and you can't open it, they'll cut at the side, blood would drain out, and the boxer has, air quote, better vision in the match.
It's a beautiful sport.
So what's a cornerman?
The cornerman, it's the man who stands in the corner.
Trick question. You know, it's the guy with the bucket.
See, I even said,
He's just
I thought he was just the bucket man.
You know, he just is a general hand. He does whatever's needed. And obviously, you can work out what a trainer is. So
No, tell me.
well, we'll get to that later. So in shithole venues like this, you get a cornerman allotted to you from the venue. I can't think of any human being I want cutting my eyelid open less than a dude that works in a place that's been described as a large an empty trash can.
You got Shaky Jake. Shaky Jake. Don't worry, he's got the TTs, but he knows, I can do it.
In this match, the cornerman gave Rocky a shot of booze between rounds.
Christ.
And the match itself, like, you know, not a lot of it's remembered except the fact that Rico head-butted Rocky in the second round, which resulted in, and once again, I'm sorry that this, I just have to say a lot of technical terms, so please bear with me. In technical terms, Rocky knocked Rico the fuck out. The ref didn't even count him out.
Jeez.
They left as 2 new fighters were ushered in. Rocky bummed a cigarette off a stranger in the crowd. and the 2 new fighters were fighting by the time he had left the room of the venue. So him and Rico went backstage, and it turns out Rocky punched Rico so hard in the kidneys that Rico would later go on to piss blood.
I actually know a guy who once had that happen to him. He used to do backyard fighting.
Oh, just...
Oh, really? This is at university. I won't mention names, but they used to get drunk and go, let's go fight. And then, I'd sit in the living room, staying right out of it. And then you just hear, my kidneys. And he was convinced for a week that he was pissing blood. It's just like, Jesus.
Yeah, there's nothing so ratchet as backyard wrestling. So Rocky took home a whopping $40.55.
Ka-ching, make it
Got
rain.
the big W, and on the way home. So the next few months would transform his life forever. Rocky's neighborhood was Philadelphia's iconic South Street, which is now it's the largest tourist attraction.
Okay, right.
Quite commonly, traditionally it was a home of Italians and alternative in the African community. It became cool, and then all the money moved in.
The coffee shops came in and all that sort of stuff.
Rocky lived in a tiny dump, which only feature was a poster of Rocky Marcioni and a curled-up mattress in the corner he used as a boxing bag. At this time, he worked as a debt collector for a loan shark and his childhood friend, Tony Gazzo. Both being Italians, Gazzo thought of him like family. And, you get the sense that they were real and genuine friends. Except Rocky was happy to have a little bit of distance from him. And not get too involved.
Like the friend that comes to your birthday and you're like, oh, thanks for inviting me. It's like, we haven't seen each other for ages. No, we haven't. No. I'm so sorry about that. But secretly, you're inviting everybody else to every other social event.
No. Like, I think they were friends. It just was Rocky was smart enough not to be too involved with criminals.
Okay.
So Rocky was actually great at his job. Do you know why?
Because he could... No.
Despite his fearsome reputation, he wasn't a violent person. Like, he resolved stuff without hurting people. And this is another interesting part about Rocky. Like, we'll get to it later. Like, Rocky at sometimes speaks with language that is so poetic and simple that just completely articulates an aspect of the human experience. Other times, he asks questions that are so dumb, you go, "Are you okay, mate?" So,
oh wait, that's what happens when you stare for like 30 minutes nonstop at streetlights in all fairness.
Well, and I found this on the internet. Somebody wrote this about their dad,
right,
who had a debt to Garzo, that Rocky once refused Garzo's orders to break the fingers of one debtor. Mm-hmm. Instead of Rocky collected a partial payment, and then this was confirmed in an interview with Rocky.
Yeah.
When Garzo asked why Rocky failed orders, Rocky said, if I break this guy's fingers, he won't be able to work, he won't be able to pay you back. And Garzo was outraged because he was more concerned about his reputation than the actual money. But
it makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And Rocky, being a good guy, like, he was just kind of lumped with this job because it was the only thing available for him.
But it also sounds like he's weirdly looking out for both men there as well. Doesn't want to break this guy's fingers, but equally doesn't want his boss to be that upset. It's like, I want you to get paid.
Well, and this is why Garzo really liked him, because Rocky was an upfront guy. Like, he disobeyed him, told him straight. And Garzo knew Rocky would never double-cross him.
Okay.
He had no interest in being violent for the sake of violence. Rocky had no interest in going to business for himself. It was just a job. So Garzo, we'll see, helps Rocky out a lot. Like, around this time, Rocky would go to the J&M Tropical Fish Store, which was also his local pet store. And he would flirt with the clerk there, Adrian Panino, when this was actually located right across from Mighty Mick's gym. So that's
convenient.
On the surface, it probably does not seem, but Rocky is a huge animal lover. And at the time, he owned 2 turtles, Cuff and Link.
I see what you did there. I get that reference.
A goldfish called Moby Dick, and he would...
Do you reckon he even got the reference, or he just knew that Moby Dick was probably a big fish?
Listen, he's not that creative. And he was later gifted a dog that was left there called Bobkiss.
Oh.
Adrian, like Rocky, she was slightly intimidated with Rocky because of her overbearing mother dominated her and made her afraid of men because she was scared that she would leave her and she'd be alone and kind of just brainwashed her to be scared of men. But I think her mother was probably passed away at this time. She was a shy, introverted woman, and on the surface, probably seemed like she would have nothing in common with Rocky. But on the inside, they were both similar. They were just both kind and shy and plagued with self-doubt, and they really brought out the best of each other. Sometimes when people have 2 of the same problems, it turns very toxic.
Yeah.
So in this case, no, they just kind of...
I love this, that basically, we are talking about... one of the Halls of Fame boxers, and so far everything you're giving me is sort of like, he was a muscle man that didn't like using his muscle. He had tropical fish. It's like, what is it about certain boxers that have like this one aspect of them that makes you think, why are you like this? Like, I'm thinking like the boxer Dredrick Tatum, who's got that he talks like this, and it's just like, he sounds so soft and so sweet, but again, equally can knock people the fuck down.
Well, I think with Rocky, given him his circumstances, I think if somebody came up to him when he was younger and said to him, "Hey, I'm going to teach you how to paint," or "I'm going to teach you how to cook," he probably, like, he loves boxing, but he might not have been a boxer. It was quite literally the only thing the world gave him.
Right.
And for 20 years, that's how he defined himself in the world. That's how he got friends. That's how he moved through the space. And once again, I think he really loved it, but equally could have done something else.
Yeah.
Okay, so things are looking up, hey?
Things are looking up great. It's all coming up, Rocky.
She was the sister of Paulie Pinedo, And how can I put this? Paulie was a massive piece of shit.
Oh.
And without a doubt, if he wasn't in Rocky's life would have been better.
Oh, God.
Oh, just wait.
That's how my mother-in-law describes me.
And Paulie was Rocky's oldest and most loyal friend, but loyalty doesn't mean much if you're a negative burden. And to defend him a little bit, we can both assume him and Adrian's home life was terrible because of their mother. Who knows what if they had a father, but he left and joined the Navy, and who on earth knows what happened to him there? Because at the time, they weren't exactly concerned about soldiers' mental health. We do know he ended up as an alcoholic, and I think there's a good chance he's bipolar and he's unmedicated. And at the time, I think they classified that as being a manic depressive.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say this about him. It seems like he genuinely loved Rocky and his sister as much as he was capable of.
Wow, that's great.
That is a backhanded compliment.
That is the wow. He tried his best, but sometimes his best just wasn't good enough when it came to actually loving people around him.
Leading into that, what did Paulie say when Rocky first told him that he liked her sister? He told him to forget about her and that he can find somebody better, and that his sister, and I quote, was a friggin' loser, and that she, and I quote, ain't sharp, and that, and I quote, she's a loser who doesn't enjoy life, and most of all, this is the worst blow, and I quote, she reads.
What a bitch.
Yeah.
It's like Bill Hicks joke. We got ourselves a reader over here. Jeez.
And Paulie, at one point, it gets worse, was also Rocky's corner man, up until the point where Rocky fired him because Paulie betted against him. He betted for the other boxer in a match.
Van Christie wasn't his cut man.
And on top of that, he would constantly ask Rocky to get a job with Garzo. And Rocky never did. Do you know why?
Why?
Because he's not a fucking idiot.
He just sounds like the kind of guy who would probably end up working for him, and as soon as there was even a whiff of the FBI, oh, he's over there. They're all over there, every single one of them.
Yeah, Paulie is the absolute worst. He's not the person you want to be a debt collector because he'll make things overly complicated. He'll break legs. Anyway, so Paulie also kind of arranged their first date, which involved Rocky coming around to their house for Thanksgiving dinner, but they came around a little bit early, and Adrian wasn't ready, and because heaven forbid she was a shy introvert that wanted to look nice to this guy she liked.
She's the inverse of the manic pixie dream girl.
Yeah. She got angry when they came home early and got angry with Paulie and went to her room. And Paulie, who, have I mentioned he's a walking pile of shit? And this is not even the worst thing he does.
Oh, God.
Responded by going into the kitchen and throwing the turkey out of the window. And in his mind, I can kind of see this was his way of encouraging her to leave the house. But it only...
That's one way of looking at it. I would argue in the camp of that's an extremely toxic, abusive relationship happening right there.
It gets worse, but you can do the math and you can see how he thinks.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
but obviously not. It only shattered her, and she locked herself in the room. And Rocky ended up talking her out and ended up going ice skating. And thankfully, earlier that day, Garzo gave $50 to Rocky to take her out someplace nice, and they started dating.
Leslie, I have a question.
Jonathan, yes?
What has any of this got to do with boxing?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's talk about the reason we're here, Super Fight 1. So let's talk about the current champ, which was Apollo Creed. At this point, he was 34 years old. He'd been the champ for 4 years and had just quickly defended British boxer Henry Wilkinson. And he was working towards a planned bicentennial fight against the number one contender, Lee McGreen, which was scheduled for January 1st, 1976. And this fact probably gets a little bit lost. I should point out that this was actually one of many celebrations from the mid-1970s to Sunday, the 4th of July, 1976. Across various mediums to celebrate the adoption of the Declaration of Independence. It's just not one fight. It's a part of a lot of things together.
Wow.
But Lee had to pull out due to suffering a serious crack in his third metatarsal on his left hand. So Creed had an emergency meeting with his lawyer, Mr. Sawyer, his trainer, Tony Duke Evans, and local promoter and gum and parakeet enthusiast, Mike Jurgensen.
Why does everyone love animals in this?
Well, it's a story full of caring, kinding people.
And poorly.
I also need to point out that Tony Duke Evans, is the unsung hero of Rocky's life. Imagine, take your bog standard Paulie and reverse all of his qualities. That's Duke, just a nice dude who has your back.
He won't throw a turkey out the window.
Yeah, Duke's the type of guy that you can take with you to Russia to build makeshift gym equipment in a barn to avenge the death of your friend in an exhibition match. He's the type of guy.
You want the guy by your side.
Yeah, and between rounds, he would sincerely yell shit at you like, no pain, because we'll get there one episode.
Should I put attack in that one?
Yeah. And Duke and Rocky ended up, say it, John.
What?
They ended up
being the best, closest friends anyone
lifelong friends.
Oh! I'm so happy.
Apollo Creed's first match was actually against Duke. Creed won, and they just became friends. Duke trained him, and Duke practically raised him.
You said Creed won.
Pardon?
You said Creed won?
He won the match.
Oh, won. I thought you said won.
Yeah. So everyone's having a meeting to discuss what to do. They need a new opponent. Who are some of your favorite mid-70s prize fighters? Like, who do you think was around? Because I've got a big list here, and I don't want to go through, all of them because that would be a little bit boring. Just throw me your favorite prize fighter.
I can sort of go through some of the ones I can remember that my granddad mentioned, again, with his big VHS collection. I'm thinking like Ernie Romans.
He had a fight in France in the same week. He's out.
Okay. Buddy Shaw.
He just moved to California and gained 50 pounds.
All right. Roots through brain. Billy Dukes.
He just developed a bleeding ulcer and retired. The main problem was that none of the contenders thought 5 weeks was enough time to prepare for what at the time was the most viewed sporting event in the history of the earth. And also on top of that, Apollo Creed was a one-in-a-lifetime boxer. Even with adequate time to train, he's hard to beat. You can see why a lot of people just went, no, pass. There was some discussion about postponing the match until July 4th, but, they decided if they did that, the match would just kind of get lost in their overall celebrations. And also, unwilling to waste the time and money and effort already invested in the fight, Creed comes up with a promotion that would generate huge publicity. He was going to offer an unknown local fighter an opportunity to battle Creed for the title in Philadelphia. And the promoters had a big book of local fighters, and Creed flipped through the book and dismissed the fighters one by one. Once again, I've got this list is huge. So, tell me some of your favorite local Philadelphian fighters from the mid-70s. And
first off the top of my head, Big Chuck Smith.
Well, he was too old and too dull of a fighter.
Okay. Well, if you won't take the old Chuckster, can I offer up Billy Snow?
He fouled too much.
All right, you're working me here, Leslie. Okay, well, I'm going to give you a left. Boom! Bobby Judge.
Apollo didn't feel heat from that name, and I quote, Judge, sludge, probably a drudge.
Okay, my final one. I got you. Sit down. Josad.
Once again, no heat. So he flipped through the book and found the name he liked. He found that little bit of special magic. He found the Italian Stallion. Jurgensen, the promoter, tried to talk him out of it due to Rocky's pretty average record. But you know what? Apollo Creed knew a good gimmick when he saw one. Or should I say, the man known as the King of Sting, the Master of Disaster, the Count of Monte Fisto, the Dancing Destroyer, the Prince of Punch, Apollo Creed knew a good gimmick when he saw one.
Yeah.
And he also went on to explain his choice by saying, who discovered American? An Italian, right? Who better to celebrate the 200th birthday than to get it on with one of his ancestors? Duke, who was the unsung hero of Rocky's life, warned Apollo against fighting Rocky because Rocky fights left-handed, and I'll explain that later. That's actually a huge deal. Apollo brushes off the idea and doesn't really see him as a real threat, and he pledged to knock him out within 3 rounds.
Yeah.
Jurgensen contacts Rocky via Mickey's gym under the guise of getting him to be a sparring partner for Creed because they still wanted to keep it on the download before they announced it.
Yeah.
Rocky goes to his office and Rocky instantly starts selling himself as a good sparring partner. And then Jurgensen broke the news and Rocky was unsure that he heard what he actually heard and continued to sell himself as a good sparring partner. And then he had to get it spelled out for him. And Rocky, using that simple poetry of his tongue, replied with, "Sure, absolutely."
And then they said, "Are you sure that you know what you're saying sure to?"
Well, even better. From there, he went straight into a media interview with Apollo Creed, and the footage still survives, and it's amazing. And like normally in these media events now, we're used to both parties cutting promos on each other,
yeah.
But not this one. Let's just say Rocky wasn't camera ready at this point. So, well, it was weird. Apollo's job in this interview was to sell the concept of the match.
Yeah.
And he couldn't rip Rocky down because he had to make people believe that Rocky was actually a legitimate opponent. And then the media asked Rocky what he thought of Apollo Creed. And Rocky, being Rocky, talked him up. Like Rocky was a genuine fan and respected him. And then he gave a shout out to Adrian. And you know what, John? I don't think this media interview had the heat that Apollo really wanted.
There's Apollo giving it the old, like, I'm going to take him down, but not too hard. And then there's Rocky just going, I love this man. Yeah. I've only just met him, and I want to have a dinner with him. Yeah. And I love Adrian. And say hi to Moby Dick for me. Just,
So then the match was instantly mocked, and as I said before, it was called the greatest farts in sport history. So that media interview was successful compared to the second one.
Oh, goodness.
Okay, so this interview took place in the middle of a training session. Now, Rocky's always had poor footwork and balance, so in order to overcome, he trained by tying a shoelace between his feet to teach him not to overstep when he moves, because if your feet are too wide, you have no balance and you can't generate power. So in this interview, once again, the reporter's trying to get Rocky to slag off Creed.
Yeah.
But Rocky wasn't having it. And then he turns on the reporter and once again talks up about how great Creed is. Which is kind of like a genius move, because if you cut a promo and saying that your opponent's shit and then you lose, what does that make you? But if you talk up your opponent and you win, like...
I like to think maybe like Rocky was trying something like that old psychology. You know, like how you see when you watch when parents of missing children or husbands of missing wives, that sort of thing, and they always go like, "This is a message to the person out there. Her name is Sarah, and I know you don't want to hurt Sarah, because if you hurt Sarah," and you start trying to make that person, you start trying to make the victim into a person. Do you reckon Rocky was just trying to get to the point where if I keep boosting it up, like he won't hit me as hard. He won't hit me as hard.
Well, funny you said that. Put a tack in it. So, Apollo enters the gym, and he was, and I quote, dressed like a black god. And then the ball drops. Rocky had been set up for a publicity stunt. Because he obviously didn't know Creed was coming. Yeah. So then Creed cuts a promo on Rocky to the camera, and then he gets what we call in wrestling a cheap pop. There was a wrestler called Mick Foley who he would always get cheap pops if he was in Philadelphia. He when he's talking, he was like, "And my favorite town, Philadelphia," and my favorite sports team, your local sports team, and then people realized he was doing it, and then people that became a part of his act. People wanted to see how cheap of a pop he could go. So he gets a cheap pop by telling Philadelphia that the match will be screened free on television. And then, sick and tired of all of this, Dipper Brown decides to go into business for himself. He goes towards Apollo and cuts a promo.
Hey, Leslie, who's Dipper Brown?
Dipper Brown was Mickey Goldman's last protege. And Mickey actually gave away Rocky's locker to Dipper without warning Rocky. So Dipper then challenges Rocky to a spar, which makes no sense for Rocky because he wouldn't have gained anything out of it. And he also probably didn't care. And also, everyone worked out pretty fast that Dipper didn't really want to fight Rocky. He just wanted to hurt him and ruin his chances with Creed. And Rocky, not being a fucking idiot, didn't bite. He just awkwardly shuffled away because he had a shoelace tied between his feet. So then...
This is just an episode of Grange Hill now.
Yeah. So then Mike steps in, and you're thinking, who on earth is Mike? So there's two people who work at this gym. Mickey and Mike, who is sometimes known as Mikey, because that could never get confusing. And I'll explain who Mickey is later. And I mentioned Mike because he has the best quote of this entire episode. And Mike is a small dude. He's not a boxer. Like, I think he's like, he's a trainer and does cleaning. He's just he's a quarterman, essentially.
Yeah.
He goes up to Dipper and I quote, "Why you try to cut a man? Back off, scumbag, or I'll bite your face." So then Dipper punches Mike and he goes down. And Apollo's like, holy fuck. He just starts making a slow back up. So then Rocky shuffles back to Dipper and Dipper tells him to kiss his feet. So then Rocky goes down and you know what he's not doing? Kissing his feet. He's just lining himself up so he can hit Dipper in the ribs as hard as possible. And Dipper drops like a motherfucker. And Apollo sees that and has newfound respect for Rocky. Because once again, Rocky isn't an idiot.
But Rocky was already buttering up with his sweet, sweet words. And now it's just like, now look, I can actually throw a punch. Yeah. Oh.
And once again, I'm not sure if this media interview had that special type of heat Apollo wanted. Despite these media interviews, something about Rocky connected with the general public. And from then, he got both hate and fan mail from strangers wishing him luck or defeat. Paulie, despite being an alcoholic, tries to sell himself to Rocky as his trainer. Rocky declines.
But why? But Paulie has shown himself to be an upstanding citizen of the world.
I know. Well, Paulie doesn't have a whole lot more to do up until the fight. But at one point, he does go on a drunken rampage and tries to beat Rocky's head in with a baseball bat. And he blames both Rocky and Adrian for all of his problems. And then he goes up to his sister and asks if she's been busted. And then...
I don't want to ask what that means.
And then he ends up selling ad space on the back of Rocky's robe for the place he works, Shamrock Meat.
Such a piece of shit.
He's both sludge and a drudge.
The big book of history's bastards, Paulie.
So the day after his first media interview, he starts training. You know what? Yeah, the problem being, he didn't really have the money to quit his job. He's not like he would have to take 5 weeks off. Ooh, he doesn't earn a lot. He's not rich. And his plan was just really to live on nothing up until the fight. And I'm sure Adrian would have helped him out. But you know what?
What?
This asshole, his luck is changing. Somebody stepped in and made his training possible. His boss, Tony Garza. Don't get me wrong, Garza was a piece of shit. Like he was a 70s loan shark. But amazingly, Rocky's life was so terrible that he, up until Adrian, was the only person who ever showed him genuine kindness and friendship.
Oh my goodness.
And Rocky told him that he had to quit, and Garzo offered him nothing but the best of luck, and then gave him $500 for training. But it wasn't a loan, it was a gift. And then he put $3,000 on him to win. And before you get too warm and fuzzy about Garzo, this is what he said about Rocky's fighting. We Guineas need to show these Afro-American where it's at. And
Good Lord.
in his defense, he didn't use the N-word. It could have been more racist.
It could have been a lot more problematic than it already was. Good grief.
It's okay. He can call himself a Guinea. He's a Guinea. So Rocky was going to train himself until he was paid a visit by height 5'5", weight 70 kilograms, hailing from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Michael Mickey Goldmill. Mickey was born on April 7, 1975, to a Jewish family, except the fact he might not have been. And this is everything you need to know about Mickey in this one story. He's a stubborn old bastard who likes boxing. So, okay, just follow me here. Rocky Balboa said in the year 1975 that Mickey Goldmill told him that his age was 76. So that means he was either born in 1889 or 1899. But on the plaque on his grave, it reads 1905. So it's commonly thought that Mickey lied about his age and said he was 23 to start boxing when he was 17, and then so he could start his boxing career early, then kept up this lie for the rest of his life.
Also, potentially, don't forget, if he was born around about 1905, it wouldn't have done him very good in the First World War, but in the Second World War, a lot of teenagers were making their way to the drafting offices and saying they want to go and fight the Krauts, and they would lie about their age in the hopes that they could get in there.
Like he might have served, I don't know.
Oh, that's all I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Well, tiny dude. Well, bantamweight. Well, either way, he boxed professionally from 1922 to 1943, but never gained a measure of fame. Goldmill recalled that he once knocked out an opponent, Guinea Russo, out of the ring, the same day that Luz Freibo knocked out Jack Dempsey on September 14th, 1932. Goldmill claimed that his feat didn't really garner any media attention because he didn't have a manager while Dempsey's did.
Right.
So anyway, he retired in 1943. And as no one was really keeping tracks of win and losses around this time, I have two sets of scores. I'm just going for the cooler one.
Okay.
So, out of the two different set of scores I have, the cooler scores is this. Guess how many wins he had? Rough guess.
10.
72.
Oh, that is quite good.
Guess how many knockouts this fucker?
30?
70.
Oh.
And one defeat against Abe Goldstein, who was an all-time great bantamweight champion. And when I went to Abe's Wikipedia page, I got all excited because I saw he lost a high-profile match to this guy called Pancho Villa. And I got all excited because I was like, what, the Mexican revolutionary? Because Pancho Villa did do weird media stunts like that, but it turns out to be a Filipino boxer, the same name. So after he retired, he opened up a boxing gym, and there he began to train fighters. Rocky had been training there for the past 15 years, and, most of this time, Mickey was telling him that he was wasting his potential. And, Mickey, he's the type of guy that communicates with yelling, even if he's not angry. And he's the type of guy, if he calls you a son of a bitch, he probably really likes you.
I love you, you son of a bitch. Marry me. Marry me, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of think... No, go back to the issue about if Mickey declined him for training.
Yeah.
I kind of think it was a case of Rocky probably did ask for help. He's just not very articulate. And I think also Mickey, a guy who only yells, needs everything spelled out for him. And heaven forbid, it could be a case of two men not being able to communicate. So, yeah, I don't think either person was in the wrong, because Mickey always thought Rocky had something.
Yeah.
So Mickey comes around to his house to try to convince him to take him on as his trainer, and he also compared him to Rocky Marciano, which didn't hurt. You know, Mickey needed Rocky as much as Rocky needed him. The problem with Mickey's career isn't that he was a good boxer, not a great boxer. Not at all. It's even sadder. He was a great boxer that was never given the chance to be one. He explains this to Rocky, that he never got his shot and that Rocky's shot could be both of their shots.
Yeah.
But Rocky was still mad at Mickey for never helping in the past. But after a bit of talking, Rocky accepted him as his trainer. Cut to 4 a.m. the next day. It's cold and early. And after a big glass of raw eggs, Rocky gets into training. Up front, we're doing a bit of cardio, and he would run around his local area and sometimes using bricks as hand weights.
Yeah.
Running for boxers is important because you drop weight. And some boxers feel it helps with their stance and endurance because boxing has as much to do with your feet than it does your fists.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So his first stop, he would run to the City Hall, then to the Museum of Modern Art, where he would run up the stairs to build his stamina, then towards the river, towards Spring Garden Street, under the train tracks along the piers, and at 5:30 in the morning, he would get to the loading platform of Shamrock Meats. There, Paulie would let him in, and he would go to the cold room and beat his meat. He trained by punching slabs of raw meat. And you know what? He got really good at breaking ribs. This will come important later. And I imagine Paulie would just drink and watch him and brag to all his co-workers.
And hopefully keep making the beat the meat joke at the same time. Look at him. He's beating his meat.
Yeah. This was actually the place of his third media interview, which went okay.
That's better. That's better than before.
The interviewer wasn't a dick to him. No one cut a promo or tried to fight him. They just filmed him punching some meat. And Duke saw this interview, and Duke being
his best friend of all time.
The unsung hero of Rocky's life.
Can I take that one again, please? And please, and
Duke being
the unsung hero of Rocky's life,
saw the interview and was the only person that saw Rocky as a threat. Duke saw that little special something that Mickey saw and no one else could see.
What the French call a certain I don't know what.
Yeah. He warned Creed, and Creed was not fucking interested. Because Creed was also heavily involved in the publicity of the match. And, he had a lot of charities involved, yada, 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 yada. So from Shamrock Meats, he would meet Mickey in the gym, and there they would prove his footwork, balance, and they just did a lot of general conditioning, like push-ups, sit-ups, speed work, and the good old getting punched in the stomach. Because that's the thing when you're a boxer. Rocky and Mickey would study 8mm footage of Creed. And in very basic terms, Creed was faster, but Rocky is stronger.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about Apollo's training?
Leslie, I'd like to talk about Apollo's training, please.
There you go. Finished. There's no evidence that he actually trained.
Do you think because he didn't take the match seriously? I mean, obviously we knew he wasn't taking the match that seriously.
Yeah, no, we know that when he trained, he didn't drink alcohol and he ate kosher. He would get to bed early and he would be up before dawn. And he owed a lot of his strength and ease of mind to proper sexual activities.
Really?
Yeah.
Because most sportsmen are told not to be getting down before an event.
Hey.
Get yourself pent up.
He's one of the greatest boxers of all time. How many straps have you won, laddie?
You don't know my life, Leslie. You don't know the dark alleys I've taken punches to.
If there was the year 2008, I could use the joke, you enjoy a good punch in the ring. But you can't. That's not woke anymore.
That's not woke.
Yeah. And he certainly didn't train to correct the fact that Rocky was a southpaw, which is a left-handed boxer. Now, traditionally, southpaws have been disadvantaged against because there was this incorrect belief that was held due to their left-handed stance. They had some advantage over a right-handed opponent. And they didn't. They didn't have a physiological one as much as a psychological one. You can't fight a left-handed boxer the same way you fight a right-handed boxer. You have to go in more V and L shapes. But there's nothing the southpaw can't do to the right-handed boxer, but that the right-handed boxer can't do to the southpaw.
Yeah.
Like, in style, it's absolutely equal, but the advantage is, and it's an important one, that most southpaw have way, way, way more experience fighting right-handed boxers than right-handed boxers have fighting southpaws. Probably not at the moment. Like, some of the greatest champions of all time have been left-handed. At this current time, it's not really an issue. Then, because it was too much effort to train one. It was just too, and once again, the misheld belief. So, much like Mickey, Rocky was constantly, like, what he lacked was something that was also out of his control. Rocky was all over the media leading up to the fight. He was in Sports Illustrated, The American Sportsman, Ring Magazine, Boxing World, True, Tempo, Newsweek, Boxing Sport. In Philadelphia Magazine, where there was a picture of him and the mayor, Mayor Rizzo.
Mayor Rizzo.
Yeah, I know. He had that fighting spirit about him. And this is a quote that you can actually find on his Wikipedia entry. In his 1975 re-election campaign, he said, and I quote, "Just wait after November. You'll have a front row seat because I'm going to make Attila the Hun look like a faggot." And he did, and he got re-elected.
Ow, that's... I don't know, that... Whoa.
Fighting spirit, John.
Yeah.
He got that eye of the tiger.
That's not the F word I'm worried about. Jesus.
So, before the fight, Mickey gave Rocky a cufflink that he had turned into a necklace that was gifted to him by Rocky Marciano. And it was Mickey's favorite possession in the world. And at this point, they were like family. Now, this is, like, a lot of times, this story gets told wrong. Like, people think this match is kind of like a David versus Goliath, but it's actually, like, far more sad and far more subtle than that.
Like Tom versus Jerry.
Well, what I find really interesting about it is the night before the match, Rocky actually concedes to Adrian that he can't win. Like, I've got a quote from Rocky, and, like, I really like this quote because, once again, it's this simple poetry about how he experienced the world. It really doesn't matter if I lose this fight. It really doesn't matter if this guy opens up my head either, because all I want to do is go the distance. No one's ever gone the distance with Creed, and if you can go the distance, you see, as that bell rings and I'm still standing, I'm going to know for the first time in my life, see, that I just want another bum from the neighborhood. Now, the story of Rocky isn't about beating somebody. It's about pushing yourself against all odds to go further than you could ever imagine. And this feeds into the fact that Rocky had never broken his nose. Just interpersonally, he'd never been in a situation. He just pushed and pushed and pushed past he was capable of. But he wanted it. Like, he wanted it badly. Life could just not give it to him. And there's something so sad and heartbreaking about this, because in his life he was shit on so much. The idea of lasting 15 rounds of pain was more appealing than winning, because he didn't see himself as a winner. Nothing about his life was about winning, but he fucking knew about enduring. And for him, life had hit him hard, but he could get hit and keep on moving. And those were the skills he had.
Yeah.
Those were the skills he had to endure the 15 and do something that no one has ever done before, which is just, it's doing that is more honest to who he was, who he is. But so...
This human walking brick wall with a heart of gold.
So, fight night. We're finally getting here. This fight was shown all over the world via closed-circuit television. Do you have any idea what this is? Closed-circuit television. It's a thing that doesn't really exist anymore, and to be honest, it's hard to believe it ever existed. It's basically a primitive form of pay-per-view, which, to be honest, pay-per-view is less of a thing.
Yeah.
It was essentially, they essentially live stream footage into cinemas. And this shocked me. It actually started in 1978 and was replaced by pay-per-views in the mid-80s. And it was primarily to stream boxing. And then later, they streamed the first couple of WrestleManias using closed caption. It was thought the match drew up to 750 million closed caption viewers worldwide. Paulie turned up with a hot broad.
Of course he did.
Garzo was there because he'd laid 3 Gs down. And Adrian was there, but she spent most of her time in the locker room. The announcers for the evening was Bill Baldwin and Jimmy Michaels. Vegas gave Rocky 50-1 odds. Didn't see him going past the third round. Rocky's pay date was $150,000.
Jeez.
And he originally planned to buy a pet store with the money.
Oh my God, he's so beautiful.
I know.
He's just like, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with Paulie? I'm going to buy a horse. What are you going to buy, Rocky? I'm going to get myself a shop with some little fish, and a little Moby Dick's going to have friends.
Yeah. Creed makes a dramatic entrance dressed as George Washington. And
of course he did.
As if he was on RuPaul's Drag Race, does a double reveal to a Uncle Sam costume. He's got some bass in his walk.
And then what did he lip sync to?
Yeah. Well, then comes later. Do you know what Rocky's first thought was? This is his less poetic side.
I don't want to ask.
How much do you think that costume cost? Okay, so Miles Jurgensen was the ring announcer, and he acknowledged previous champions in attendance, including, do you know any of these boxers? Jack Dempsey?
Nope.
Jack LaMotta?
I've heard of him.
Raging Bull. Joe Louis and Joe Frazier.
Oh, Joe Frazier.
Okay, the fighters were announced. Rocky Balboa, age 30, height 5'11", 190 pounds, reach 74 inches. In Rocky's corner was his trainer, Mickey. Mike was his cornerman, and Al Savona was his cut man. And what I really like about this is all 3 men were wearing pink. They're defying gender stereotypes while engaging in the most masculine sport possible.
I like to think that someone somewhere messed up when they were washing, and that's what really happened.
Yeah. No, Mickey looks cute in all pink.
The Gora.
So champion Apollo Creed, age 34, height 6'2", weight 210 pounds, reach 81 inches. So more muscle, longer reach, taller, but also a little bit older. His record was, have a guess how many wins he had?
How long was his career?
Is probably about 10 years into it.
65.
Lower.
Oh, 30?
46.
Oh.
Guess how many losses he had?
0.
Under-fucking-feeded.
Oh.
So, that's also on the line.
Yeah. Yeah, jeez.
If you lose, you don't want to lose in this match. So, in Creed's corner was Duke and a bunch of guys I didn't bother learning their names of.
Why would you?
Because they're not important. Let's cover some boxing stuff. So I'm going to make this super basic, just so we have a general idea of what's going on.
Yep.
Now, this match was set for 15 rounds. Each round goes for 3 minutes with a minute break in between. Mm-hmm. So you win, you can win by 3 ways, either by knockout.
Yeah.
We get what that is.
That's easy.
Technical knockout, you can kind of take a guess what that is.
Street Fighter.
And by points. And points is, people don't understand how points work. So I'm just going to rip through that. The scoring system used in professional boxing is called the 10-point must system. And these are the basic scorings for a round. Judges score on a 10-point scale, and most rounds will go 10-9, with the more dominant boxer receiving 10 and the other receiving 9. So, for example, Godzilla 10, King Kong 9.
Gotcha.
If a boxer gets knocked down, he loses a point. If he gets knocked down twice, he loses 2 points. If they both get knocked down, it cancels each other out. And this is where Rocky really lacks, because he's got bad footwork, so he gets knocked down a lot. And the only way he can really win is by a knockout.
Yeah.
So you win by being more dominant, and that's based on a bunch of different factors. But when you really come down to it, it's about landing clean, effective punches.
Right, okay.
The person who does that the most will win. And just basic rules: you can't hit below the belt, hold, trip, kick, headbutt, wrestle, bite, spin on, or push your opponent, or hit them back in the head, or the back, or in the kidneys. And if a boxer gets knocked down, he has until the count of 10 to get back up. And if he doesn't get out, that's a knockout. And if you get knocked down, you can't be saved by the belt. So if your match has a second to go, you get knocked down, you still have 10 to get back up.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So the match starts out a little bit rough. Rocky takes a couple of moments just to find the pace of the match and find his feet, and he comes out swinging, and he doesn't land a lot. But towards the end of the first round, that's where everything changes. Rocky lands one on Creed's chin, and for the first time in his career, he goes down, and the place explodes. And to relate it to something more recent, I was in the arena when Ronda Rousey got knocked out by Holly Holmes. Oh. It's completely cliche to say that she fell down in slow motion. You know, the air got sucked out of the room. There was electricity. Like, it's cliche, but it's also true. I've been in an arena where something no one thought that would be possible has happened, and I can only imagine it's the same. And Creed gets up at 8 and is humiliated, but he's still going to plan. He's got to take him out in the third because it's still a show. You still need a couple of rounds.
Yeah, exactly. You got to go. That's what the people pay for. That's what they want.
Duke told him that don't fucking toy around. Like, everyone thinks this is a joke except Rocky. So Creed comes back in the second round where he busts Rocky's nose wide open. And this is on. Like, by the end of the second, it is. Neither are playing around. So
Rocky wants that tropical fish store.
Yeah. The third round comes around, and Creed he's not fucking around. He's going to the ring in full force to do one thing. He ends the round on the ropes and in deep trouble.
Oh.
Like, Rocky isn't backing down. So I won't go into detail of what happened in every round, but I'll just give you a very basic outline. On a technical level, Apollo Creed is very experienced, and he's got very fast fists. He gets in close, he does quick combos, mostly to the head, and he gets out of there. He's also got a larger reach, so it means he'll hit Rocky before Rocky can hit him. Rocky, on the other hand, he's just raw power. Like, he has an old-fashioned style of boxing, and quite lucky that he's got a chin made out of granite.
And always an advantage in any sport.
Yeah, and just remarkable endurance. And Rocky's strategy, and this has kind of always been his strategy, is to go in, get clobbered, then work on the midsection. And why does he work on the midsection and not the head? Is because Creed's too fast. Like, if he's aiming for the head, Creed will just duck and move and block. But the midsection, it's a bigger target. And the goal is, if you work the midsection, it's a long game, but it pays off if you can do it right. If you work the midsection, you'll essentially take your opponent down from the inside. Because if you break or bruise a rib, what's going to happen is they'll start breathing shallower. Okay. Because it hurts to breathe.
Yeah, of course.
Breathe shallower, which will reduce their power. Even to punch, you don't punch with your fist. You punch with your entire body. Yeah. Like, a lot of it comes from your midsection. So if you bruise or break a rib, it will hurt them every time they throw a punch.
Okay, yeah.
So then, it's a long game, but when you get them in that spot, they're kind of fucked. It's hard to kind of come back from that. And then Rocky will come in and knock him out. I'm going to get sidetracked for a second. An unexpected byproduct of Rocky being left-handed is that his matches look really cinematic. Now, I'll explain. If they were both right-handed fighters and Apollo was at the back, Rocky was at the front, at any given camera angle, we would see the back of Rocky's head, which would block out Creed's face, the front of Creed's face. And because he's left-handed, their bodies are shaped like a V. So when the camera's in front of them, you can see both of their faces. And I guess, like, as humans, we connect to faces. We've got that weird thing how we try to see faces in everything, like rocks on Mars and such as like that. So we can see their faces, so we can connect a little bit better to their emotional journey, to what they're experiencing in that ring. And I guess what I'm trying to say is for that reason, the matches just play to the camera better. They feel a little bit more cinematic.
Yeah, of course.
And
listen to you, Lars von Trier.
And this is certainly seen in this match. His matches just play to the camera better.
Yeah.
Okay, round 14, and both men are fucked. They've got big puffy
Just
eyes.
lying on the ground, just going slap, slap, slap.
They both have big puffy eyes, and they're moving slow. And Rocky gets knocked down in the corner, and Mickey's telling him to stay down. It's like, dude, this is it.
Yeah.
You've done enough. And Greed starts celebrating, but Rocky gets up at 9. And now, what have we learnt about Rocky, if anything?
He's not a man that gives up. He's a man that keeps pushing forward.
He's not a fucking idiot.
Nah.
What he's doing, like, he knows that Creed is desperate. He knows that Creed wants a knockout. So Rocky's setting him up.
Wily little thing, him.
Yeah. So he's in the corner, and he knows Creed's got to come for his head.
Yeah.
Rocky has like he essentially has like a special move. If this was Street Fighter,
A, B, and quarter circle, and I click X, and what do I get, Leslie?
He gets up really close to them, and he just punches him in the ribs. From point blank,
dirty ass maneuver.
Yeah, no, from point blank range, over and over and over again. And like when he fought Drago, he got him about 10 times, and in this case, breaks his ribs. So now, because it's up close,
Crunch.
Yeah, and it's the same spot. When Apollo swings, he's in pain. When he breathes, he's in pain. And on top of that, he has to protect his ribs now because one more good punch, he's got to go down. So the bell rings, and they go to their corners. And Rocky's right eye is fucked. It's swollen. He can't see out of it. Mickey's having doubts of whether Rocky should go on, and Mike wants to stop the match. But Rocky being Rocky, have a guess at what he wants to do.
He wants to keep on going.
But he has to get cut open. And, like, once again, I'm not sure.
Cut me,
Mick. And I'm not sure if cutting was, like, I think it could have been, I don't know. But if you see the footage, Al seems to be doing it on the down low.
Sure.
Like at one point, Mickey's looking around, and the only reason you can really see that he gets cut is the explosion of blood, which happens afterwards. And in Creed's corner, it ain't much better. Creed's telling Duke that his ribs are broken and he's probably bleeding internally, and Duke wants to call off the match, but Creed won't let him because you know what? These guys got one more round. They're in a lot of pain, but they got 3 more minutes to settle this. Apollo comes out and is noticeably protecting his ribs.
Yeah.
This is everything Rocky's life has comes to. He goes in and bangs this guy in the ribs. Bang and bang. Because, he has to go for it. He's not ever got to get another shot.
Yeah, of course.
Like, forget the 15 rounds. Rocky is in a whisper's grasp of becoming the new heavyweight champion of the world. So he just lays in body shots after body shots after body shots, and Creed is fucked. No air or pain. He can barely swings, and Rocky just goes body. And then he goes for the knockout punch in the face, and Creed hits the ropes, not the mat. He falls back, and you see the footage, and he's knocked out for a second.
Yeah.
And if he was half a meter further, he would have hit the mat. And there's a good chance he wouldn't have got up. He hits the rope. Rocky comes in. Bell rings. He lasts at 15. Then, can we use a modern term? Then Creed gets cucked. Creed comes up to Rocky and in a tone that sounds like a threat says, "There will be no rematch." And Rocky, like a motherfucker, cuts him down with that pause and says, "Don't want one." But there was a rematch, and maybe that's a fantastic history for another day. So the media comes in, and it turns out that Rocky still isn't camera ready.
Who would have thought, particularly after 15 rounds?
Yeah. They ask him questions, and he's just going, Adrian! Adrian!
What are you going to do next?
And this is the moment I think the world really fell in love with Rocky, because he could not give a shit about the outcome, even if he won. And once again, it was about testing himself, not Creed. This would have meant just as much to him if it was an unpaid match, untelevised, and if he couldn't tell anyone about it, because it has nothing to do with anyone else except himself. And I have to admit that maybe Paulie isn't completely useless, because if you look at the footage, you see him standing on like the frame outside of the ring, arguing with a security guard because he wants to get in the ring, so he's just being a dipshit, while slowly on the down on lifting up the ring rope so Adrian can get in.
Ah, good man.
Because he's not a good man. He's done one good thing his entire fucking life.
I'm giving him that.
And of course, they go in and they embrace. And do you want to know who wins?
Who wins?
It's unfucking important. That's the whole fucking point. It doesn't matter who's won. So what are we doing next time?
Well, Leslie, I've allowed you to jabber on like the vocal jellyfish that you are and detailing us with fantastic tales. But I have conspiracies for you next time. Yeah. This starts off from a little incident back in 2014, and it includes two words that are available on the dark web and government files. Those two words are Sherlock Holmes. Oh yeah, that's right. Conspiracy.
Is that like Operation Paperclip?
Never you mind what it's like. Going all the way to the government. I'm telling you, man. We're talking Nazis. We're talking the 1800s. We're talking Arthur Conan Doyle. Mate, it is on. I can't sell it any better than that. Do you want to hear a fun story, everyone? So basically, you might hear occasionally when people are often things like when comedians, they'll go, "I shall fight you, Queensberry rules." You know, when people are doing that, basically that goes down to the ninth Marquis of Queensberry, who lent his name. Basically, there's this boxer who created the rules that we pretty much use now, the rules you were talking about before. Less of the V's and the L's. And it wasn't getting much notice, so the Marquis of Queensberry said, "I'll lend my name to it." There's a great picture they did when it got announced. Someone drew a cartoon of him and called him ultra lightweight, ultra featherweight. They compared him, the Marquis of Queensberry, which I think is hilarious. It's like, I'm a boxer. Nah, you're not. But okay, bless you. But what's really fascinating is the fact that his son was, to use a modern vernacular, dating Oscar Wilde at the time. So like basically the Marquis of Queensberry was not having this. But I love that so much, because I love the fact this man's name was attached to boxing and fighting, and Oscar Wilde's like, couldn't give a fuck. I'm with your son. What are you gonna? Because this is the time, as we all know, being gay in the 1800s was just like perversion, like just absolute perversion. And him to go, one, don't care. Two, I'm gonna have sex with this boxing enthusiast's son.
I think that's a metaphorical knockout.